Hello everybody, my name is Zach, and this is the first episode of Nostalgic Overload.
Nostalgic Overload, starring Zach Pack.
So today's episode, we're going to be covering three topics today. The first topic is going to be Harry Potter and how that series has kind of devolved and how it's kind of starting to go off the rails a little bit. Then we're going to talk about Doctor Who and how the same has been done to that series. And then we're going to talk about Luigi's Mansion and how the same has been done to that series. So for those who do not know, Nostalgic Overload is going to be a new show. Not sure how often it's going to be, but I'm going to try and make it a regular-ish thing, where I talk about certain kinds of topics that I want to talk about, and they are completely my viewpoints, and it's my own little show, so I am very excited to be able to share my opinions with you guys, and I want to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments and all that stuff down below. So the first topic we are going to talk about today is Harry Potter. Now, Harry Potter is a series that I absolutely love. It is a series full of magic and wonder and splendor, and it's just everything encapsulated into a perfect little story arc spanning 7 books and 8 movies. But with the recent additions of the Fantastic Beasts film lines, the series has gone a bit downhill, and I feel like it's lost sight of what has given the original series its great splendor. Now, I think part of that is to the fault of J.K. Rowling, who is, of course, the author and creator of the Wizarding World, or as most people know it as the Harry Potter universe. Now, to me, this is just crazy, because Harry Potter is something that I grew up with ever since I was a little kid. Harry Potter is one of those things that it's just, I never thought that they could truly mess it up, and I think with the Fantastic Beasts series, they really started to. And it's mostly because, in my personal opinion, not a lot of people, I should say, really wanted a Grindelwald Dumbledore storyline. Most people wanted to see what the Marauders were up to and what happened in their little story arc, and maybe the beginning of the rise of Voldemort. And because of how the timeline of the Fantastic Beasts movie is, maybe in the last movie we'll see the rise of Voldemort. Maybe we'll see the Chamber of Secrets being opened for the first time and Moaning Merle die. But as of now, we don't have that. So the connection to the Harry Potter universe is only within Dumbledore and the few references to the Deathly Hallows that we see in the last book and the last 2 movies. So to me, it's very much a matter of, I think that since, especially because of how long it was from the release of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them and Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 2, which actually wasn't that long. It was only 5 years between the 2 movies coming out. Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 2 came out in 2011 in July, whereas Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the first movie, came out in November of 2016. So there's only a 5-year gap. But I feel like it's still long enough to where people were really wanting Harry Potter to return in some way, but I think a story this obtuse wasn't the way to do it. I think the best way they could have handled it was making it a story about the Marauders. Now, this could be the fanboy in me just wanting to see James Potter and Lily Potter falling in love, Remus Lupin and him evolving, and his character becoming friends with the Marauders and him becoming more comfortable as a werewolf. Peter Pettigrew, learning a little bit more about him as a character, because the whole time we never see him as an ally to James and Remus in series. We only see him as an enemy. So I really want to see Peter Pettigrew come in. Obviously, I want to see James Potter and more of what he was like. The dynamic between James and Severus Snape and their rivalry, and Sirius Black and seeing him grow up and how mischievous he was. Things like that are just perfect. Things like that many people wanted to see. Not too many people, I mean, of course there are people who were interested, but not too many people were interested in the Grindelwald Dumbledore arc. And if they were, which again, there are people who were, spanning it across 5 movies is a bit much in my opinion. I think they could have managed to work it in, let's say, 2. But the thing is, they're adding this complicated arc with Newt Scamander and Tina Goldstein and their relationship, and of course Queenie and Jacob and their relationship, and obviously Grindelwald and Dumbledore's relationship, which again, that should be one of the main focuses of the movie. But they're adding in all this extra fluff, being the Beast story in the first movie, and then Credence and his whole backstory in the second movie. And I think they're overcomplicating it. They are making Fantastic Beasts overly complicated. Harry Potter stories were relatively simple and easy to follow along. Now that could be because they came from children's books, but at the same time, it was something that adults could also enjoy. As an adult, I still love going back to the Harry Potter movies and watching them into the books and reading them, and just seeing how the story evolves and unfolds. The books especially, with all the extra characters and scenes and dialogue that isn't in the movies, just seeing that all unfold is brilliant, and you're still able to follow along with it without being confused. Now, the first Fantastic Beasts movie isn't confusing. The first Fantastic Beasts movie is relatively standard, easy to follow. But once you go into the second movie, there's so many extra things thrown at you, especially with the plot, not plot holes, but the parts where it's like, okay, how did Jacob not forget everyone? Because, you know, there was the part in the movie where he said, oh, it only erases bad memories, not good ones. And, you know, of course, that is kind of legitimate because Newt says in the first movie that it only erases bad memories, so that is canon, that's a thing that he says. But there's also the fact of how did Credence survive? Like, that's one thing they really have to explain. How did Credence survive? You know, because you see a little wisp of Credence floating away, so there was a hint that he survived. But how did he survive? You know, it doesn't explain, because Obscuruses, or Obscuri, I don't know the plural of it, are only known to survive to the age of 10. So how is Credence the exception? How is Credence any different? How did Credence not die? So you already have those questions going in, and then it dives more into Credence's character as the movie goes on, and it just gets too complicated, especially when you throw in Leta Lestrange and her whole backstory, and then you're throwing in Dumbledore and Grindelwald, you know, and then you have actual plot holes like Minerva McGonagall being alive during the time of this filming. So is it like, are they doing this kind of stuff for fan service? Because it's nice to see Minerva McGonagall. She's like one of my favorite characters in the books especially, but it doesn't make sense for her to be in the movie, because she was born, I think, what, 10 years before the movie took place, or something like that? Or did she start working there in the 30s? I don't remember exactly how it worked out, but regardless, she wasn't alive at the time, so how was she in the movie? And there's just so many of these other things, like, how does Grindelwald see the future? You know, with that skull bong thing, how does he see the future? How does all this work? And that's where I just don't quite understand Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. I mean, it's really not as bad as people say it is, but I feel like, no pun, actually it is kind of a pun intended, that the Harry Potter, or the Wizarding World has lost its magic. It really has. It's become way more action-orientated. I mean, this is something I sensed from the later Harry Potter movies. Ever since, this is going to sound horrible, but ever since David Yates became director of the Harry Potter movies, I just felt it drift away from magic. The first 4 movies, I really felt the magic in them. With the soundtrack done by John Williams for the first 3 films, and then Patrick Doyle for the 4th film, I just really felt the magic in those films that I just did not feel since the 4th movie. Now, maybe it's because when the 5th movie came... Actually, when the 5th movie came out, I was still a kid. I was still only 9 years old. It was in 2007 when the 5th movie came out. So, it really lost its magic. I mean, you feel some of it, you know, still, you know, especially in the first Fantastic Beasts movie, because one thing Harry Potter never did is really dive into beasts, you know, because there are beasts that you read in the books, like, I think the Niffler was in the Goblet of Fire. I want to say Bowtruckle was in Order of the Phoenix. I want to say that, but I'm not quite sure, and don't quote me on that. But you see these creatures in the books, you've read about them, and now you actually get to see them on screen. It was really, really cool. The first time I saw a Niffler on screen, I was like, I want one. So that kind of magic was there. Seeing these beasts and creatures that you've never seen before, it was an awesome feeling. But once we got past that initial splendor of seeing beasts and seeing someone's return, like Grindylows, you know, and stuff like that, we saw them return, which is awesome. But after that initial wonder, the magic was gone. Especially in the second movie, this, like, Crimes of Grindelwald, I did not feel much of the magic, you know, the wonder, you know, it just was not there, and it kind of took me out of the experience. especially since the story was heavily dark. Like, The Crimes of Grindelwald was heavily dark, and dark is not a bad thing for the Harry Potter series, or any of the Wizarding World series. It is not a bad thing. But when, like, you see Grindelwald and how evil he is, and, like, a lot of the movie was focused on Grindelwald, there wasn't a sense of mysteriousness about him, because Voldemort, at least in the first 4 movies, kind of had that. You didn't see him much. He was, especially, like, obviously because he wasn't really around, but, like, when you watched Chamber of Secrets and figured out that Tom Riddle was Voldemort, there was a sense of, oh, wow, this is Voldemort. But there really wasn't much of a sense of that. It was just kind of, oh, he's there, he's bad, he's evil, he's doing bad stuff. It just, to me, didn't work. It just didn't work that well, and Grindelwald as a villain is not that great, and I really hope that in the next 3 installments, because the 3rd Fantastic Beasts movie was delayed, so we're not going to be seeing that for another almost 2 years. And that's crazy, because it's usually, honestly, it was 2 years between Where to Find Them and Crimes of Grindelwald, so now it's going to be an extra year, so basically 3 years until we get the next one. Well, it's 2 years now, but 3 years since the last movie. So that's absolutely crazy to me, that this is what's happening to the Harry Potter franchise. It's not bad. J.K. Rowling hasn't ruined Harry Potter, but just like the absence of real magic in these films, as well as J.K. Rowling's wokeness, which I'll try not to get too political in this video, because this one and the Doctor Who discussion kind of have a little bit of political undertones to them, but regardless, J.K. Rowling's wokeness and trying to change things and, like, adapt with the times, the modern, politically correct agenda, has really taken the magic out of Harry Potter and has made it more of an experience that's, like, overly politicized now, and it's just ruined Harry Potter for a lot of fans. Most fans can still go back to the old books, read them, and have a good time, but after Cursed Child came out, everything just seemed to go downhill, and it's unfortunate because Harry Potter is a series full of wonder, and it's a shame that it has come to this. Next up is Doctor Who. Now, Doctor Who, this is actually something I'm going to give a little bit of backstory to. Doctor Who is a show. I don't watch TV much. I watch Survivor, which is a reality show. Maybe I'll talk about that in the future episodes. Not much of a nerdy, nostalgic thing, but maybe I'll talk about it. But Doctor Who is the only other show that I really watch religiously. Even now, with Jodie Whittaker and all the controversy, I still watch it because it's Doctor Who and I want to see what they do. Now, for some context, since I am an American, most Americans did not start watching Doctor Who until Matt Smith era. Like, season 5 is about when Doctor Who started to gain popularity in America. I've actually watched Doctor Who since series 2 with David Tennant and Billie Piper. That's when I started watching Doctor Who. I remember the first episode I actually ever saw. I was in the UK because I was with family, because I have family over there, so I guess it kind of makes sense that I started watching Doctor Who a little bit before most of America, but regardless, I was in the UK, and I was watching it with my friends Adam and James, and I remember the episode that they had on, it was relatively new at the time, was School Reunion, which starred, obviously, David Tennant, Billie Piper, but it also starred Noelle Clarke as Mickey Smith, and Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. And it was a really good episode. It's one of my favorites still to this day. It is the first Doctor Who episode I ever saw. Maybe I saw one when I was like really little that I just don't remember. But School Reunion was the first episode that I watched that I really started to love Doctor Who. And I was like, wow, I really want to watch this series. And then ever since then, I was watching Doctor Who. Ever since then. I did have some periods where I stopped. I started to kind of fall off of Doctor Who around season 6. Just because I thought the story arcs got a little bit too complicated, with the whole River Song thing, and, him marrying him, and then River Song being the child of Amy and Rory, and that was a little too much for me. Like, there was definitely some convoluted story arcs in the past with Doctor Who, but I thought that one was a little bit too much for me. I prefer a simpler, the story arcs are great. Bad Wolf isn't my favorite one. It was pretty good, but my favorite one had to be Harold Saxon, because, series, well, in England it's called series, in America season, whatever. Season 3 of Doctor Who, where it's David Tennant, Freema Agyeman, for the most part. Then we had John Barrowman come in, of course. But that's, in my opinion, I like the Harold Saxon where John Sim came in as the Master, and I just thought it was brilliant that Harold Saxon was being teased all this time, and that there were arcs connecting episodes. Like, there was a mention of Lazarus and his experiment, how it impacted, the Master. He mentioned it sometimes, I think, in The Sound of Drums. I think he mentioned it. Then, of course, you have the Toclafane, which are the people that were in Utopia, that episode. And overall, just that story arc was really, really good. And season 4, sorry, I hit the microphone. I don't think it had much of a story arc. It did, like, there was, like, the bees disappearing, and Donna, the Dr. Donna, and, that kind of stuff, but it wasn't, like, a big, prevalent thing. Like, it wasn't, like, a huge, like, like Bad Wolf. Bad Wolf has been said for episodes and episodes and episodes, and comes back in season 4. It was said in season 1 with Christopher Eccleston, and runs all the way up to, season 4. Even is mentioned in the Day of the Doctor, which I will mention in a little bit. But yeah, anyways, I got off topic there. So yeah, season 6, the story arc just got a little bit too much for me. I didn't care for it. I didn't like it. Or it's not that I didn't like it. Like, I watch it now, and I appreciate it. I just, to me, I mean, this is obviously nostalgia Zach coming in. Since I grew up with the Doctor having strong, like, really strong feelings for Rose Tyler, I thought it was weird that he would move on and get married to another person, albeit it's River Song. And, it's one of those things where, I mean, granted, it could be, a few hundred years for the Doctor, because the Doctor doesn't age with the show. The Doctor has adventures without the companions during companions' runs. We see that, especially with the 11th Doctor, we see that the most with him, where he has adventures without Amy, Rory, and Clara. We see that. The Doctor ages, hundreds and hundreds of years, so it's obviously he could move on, but, obviously he still has Rose Tyler in his mind. And Rose Tyler is my favorite companion biasly. Like, I just love Rose Tyler as a character, and how much she developed in her 2 seasons, and then she came back in like, Stolen Earth, and how she, redeemed herself and, like, really came to be, like, a really smart character. Because we see her in the beginning as a relatively ditzy, not ditzy, but, like, ignorant 19-year-old who works in a store. And then we see her come back in Stolen Earth as a developed adult, and how much she's learned from the parallel world and what she's really taught. And there's a whole audio series devoted to it, which I really want to listen to. Hopefully I can someday. I really want to listen to the audio dramas that Big Finish have done. I've listened to the one, I think it's the 10th Doctor Adventures Volume 1 with David Tennant and Catherine Tate, who's actually my favorite 10th Doctor companion in terms of the chemistry between them. I really love how the Doctor and Donna interact, especially in episodes like Unicorn and the Wasp and Partners in Crime, that kind of stuff. I loved how they interacted. So anyways, moving on from David Tennant, Matt Smith, I love season 5. Season 5 was great. I can't really think of any complaints. It was great. Had a great ending with Pandorica Opens. Amazing. Season 6 came around. That's when I started to fall off a little bit. Was the Siren episode in that season? The Death, or the Black Spot, or the Death Spot, whatever that episode was called. I don't remember if that was in season 6 or 7. I think it was in 6. But nevertheless, then season 7 came around. That's when I kind of tried to get back into it, because obviously, I think actually the first episode I watched getting back into it was Angels Take Manhattan. That's when obviously Amy and Rory leave. The Doctor, got caught by a weeping angel and then back to the past and die. So that happens, and then obviously Clara comes in, and Clara I have mixed feelings of as a companion. I think that she's good, but she just wasn't developed properly. Like, she's like a Rose Tyler in a sense, where she came in so ignorant, so, like, nonsensical, to where she was like, oh, this is man who travels in space, and I adore him. To when it's really the same thing, because she witnesses the 11th Doctor regenerate, just like Rose witnessed the 9th Doctor regenerate, and it's the same kind of thing. where she was apprehensive because obviously the Doctor had just changed right in front of her. I think the difference is, though, is that, well, I mean, I don't know if Rose fancied the 9th Doctor. I mean, obviously she had a thing for the 10th Doctor, but I'm not really sure if I saw the chemistry between her and Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, the 9th Doctor. I don't think I saw that chemistry. But with the 10th Doctor, it was obviously there. So, with Clara, she had that chemistry, I mean, not chemistry, she had those feelings for the 11th Doctor. So when the 12th Doctor came in, an older man, it just completely changed. And now they had a father-daughter kind of like dynamic. And I thought that worked really well. I think the 12th Doctor and Clara worked beautifully until, what episode was it? Where she threw away all the TARDIS keys. I don't know. That change in Clara, I mean, maybe it just showed her develop as a character and really figure out who the Doctor was. But regardless, I actually did skip the Day of the Doctor. I didn't mean to skip that. Day of the Doctor, I liked it. It was pretty good. It was nice seeing the 10th Doctor come back. Though, Billie Piper's role, in my opinion, was disappointing. Like, there was, like, the reason that she was there was for fan service. Like, she was the moment. And, you know, everyone wanted to see the 10th Doctor, respond to Rose being back. That's what everyone wanted to see. And we did not get that. We did not see Rose and the Doctor reunite. Or at least if she was the moment, if the 10th Doctor could see her and just react. Even the 11th Doctor. I think that would actually have been more interesting. Seeing the 11th Doctor react to seeing Rose Tyler. That would be really interesting because of the fact that it's the 11th Doctor. We've never seen him and Rose interact. So that would be really interesting. I would have loved that. But of course, she only interacted with John Hurt's Doctor. And I think John Hurt did a really good job playing the War Doctor. If I'm not mistaken, John Hurt was only there because Christopher Eccleston wouldn't reprise his role as the 9th Doctor. But I think the only thing I would have wanted out of it was, like, if Billie Piper... I think it should have taken place sometime in the 10th Doctor's timeline in terms of when he had a companion. Like, it would have been awesome to see Catherine Tate, Freema Agyeman, or Billie Piper reprise their roles for this, to be a companion. Because I think that would have been really cool. We saw the 11th Doctor with his companion, Clara. It would have been really, really cool to see Rose or Martha or Donna there to be with the Doctor as well. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the story for the 10th Doctor takes place between the Waters of Mars and the End of Time, or the next Doctor in the Waters of Mars. I think, if I'm wrong, correct me, but I believe that's when it took place in this timeline. So obviously he was alone. It wasn't too long before he regenerated. And yeah, it was a good story. I just wish that there was a companion with the 10th Doctor, so that we got to see that kind of chemistry as well, and seeing the companions interact. Because that's something I love. Well, I watched recently one of the classic Who's. It was the 5 Doctors, where we saw characters like, I think it was Joe Grant, Sarah Jane Smith, and some other classic Who companions interacting with each other from all across different Doctors. And it was really, really interesting. And that would have been really, really cool to do here, especially as a 50th anniversary special, you know? That just would have been really, really cool. But anyways, now we go on to the 12th Doctor. 12th Doctor, again, I completely fell off with. I just wasn't a huge fan of the 12th. I thought the 12th Doctor did a good job as the Doctor. Like, Peter Capaldi was a decent Doctor. Like, he just kind of reminded me of an old David Tennant. Like, with the way he lectured, the way he did his speeches. It reminded me of David Tennant. But, I don't know, just the episodes didn't grab me. There were a few exceptions, of course. But it wasn't until season 10. I did like season 10 quite a bit, where Bill came in as a companion. Now, I think they overdid her arc that she was, you know, a lesbian. I think they pushed into that a little bit too much to where it felt like he was preaching, like, a little bit. But her dynamic with the Doctor, I thought was brilliant. The professor-student, like, aspect, because obviously how smart the Doctor is and how much he knows. I thought that worked really, really well. So that worked beautifully, in my opinion. And I thought it was a good season. I thought I don't think there were many bad episodes in the bunch that I remember. I don't think I've ever gone and rewatched season 10, but I watched it when they were all coming out, and I thought all the episodes were quite good. And then Jodie Whittaker comes in. Now, Jodie Whittaker is the current Doctor. She is the current Doctor, and obviously the first female Doctor. Let me get this out of the way. No problem with a female Doctor. We had a female Master, and the idea of a female Doctor has been there for a while. Since the 11th Doctor. Literally, when the 10th Doctor regenerates to the 11th, he feels his hair, and it's because it's long, he says, "I'm a girl." So there's always been a possibility that the Doctor could turn into a woman. Always been a possibility, you know. So that's not what I'm bashing here. It's just that I thought the episodes in season 11 were extremely underwhelming. Now, obviously, this is a very common opinion. I am not the only one who thinks this way of series 11 or season 11. But I mean, the monsters, in my opinion, were lame. Like every single season had a monster or a creature that I just absolutely loved. Season 1 had the Slitheen that I loved, and the Empty Child, which were brilliant. And then season 2 had the Krillitanes, obviously, you know, my first episode, so obviously I have a soft spot for the Krillitanes. Reintroduced the Cybermen, loved the Cybermen so much. And then season 3, I'm blanking here. The Scarecrows. The Scarecrows are brilliant. Sound of Drums and what was the other episode? I actually think Sound of Drums might be part 2. Or no. That's freaking no. What am I talking about? How am I forgetting the name of these episodes? The two-parter. I feel so stupid for forgetting the names of these episodes because they're some of my favorites from season 3. But, you know, the ones with the Scarecrows and where they go to 1913, Doctor Becomes Human, all that stuff. Scarecrows are great. Jadoon were great. Carranites were great. Great. Season 4, I think, had some of my favorite, with, of course, the Vashta Nerada. The Vashta Nerada, I think, maybe besides the Slitheen, are my favorite, creatures, just simply because of, like, you know, the nature of them, how dark and spooky they kind of are. And obviously River Song got introduced in that episode, but regardless, season 11 didn't have those monsters that I love. Like, most of them just were like humanoid assassin kind of monsters. There was nothing really unique about any of them. I guess the exception being the Pating, being like the little tiny thing that like was eating metal. It's like a you know, it's a thing that can eat basically anything. It's like a goat except little and kind of cute. Like, it kind of looked like an adipose, like in terms of size and shape, but it had like little antennas, I think. But I thought the episode was underwhelming. You know, and the Doctor never really took charge. Like, the Doctor in season 11 wasn't really the Doctor. Like, you always see the Doctor taking charge, you know, like, making the best of a situation and taking charge. That's always been the Doctor. With Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, she did not do that much in this season. Now, season 12, this current season that's going on right now, she's doing that a bit more, and I'm liking that. She's taking more charge. She's being more dominant. She's being more assertive. She's, you know, being the Doctor. But in season 11, I didn't really see that that much. In season 11, there were a lot of episodes that just felt lecture-y. Like, they were, like, again, not trying to get too political, but they just seem to have a political meaning behind them. And it's, like, it's one thing if, like, one episode or 2 episodes in a season have some sort of political message, but it's like every single one did. Arachnids of the UK talked about how rich people are destroying the environment, which, funny enough, actually, another episode in season 12 basically had that same message. But yeah, Arachnids of the UK about how, you know, rich people are ruining the world. Rosa Parks about racism. So it's like, it's cool if there's, like, episodes about, like, you know, things to be aware of, but having so many of them in one season to where it kind of takes away from the sci-fi element of the show. You know, it's a sci-fi show. It's not all about the history aspect. Like, of course, there are historical episodes and episodes based on historical events, like Fires of Pompeii in season 4. But even those are usually turned into something sci-fi, and they're not used to send a message. And even then, like, you know, in Spyfall, in season 12, they take political figure. Actually, in the next episode, at least the next episode, it seems like they're having a go at Tesla because the guy was a liar. This episode hasn't premiered for me yet. By the time this comes out, it'll probably already be out. But regardless, I just think that they need to spend less time, like, jabbing at history and doing more space exploring stuff. Like, all of Season 11 so far has been on Earth. Like, all of it has been on Earth. And it seems like the next episode, episode 4, is also going to be on Earth. And it seems like the episode with the Jadoon that's coming up, that's also going to be on Earth. You know, there weren't that many episodes in David Tennant's Doctor or Matt Smith's Doctor. I think there's a little bit more with Peter Capaldi, but that were on Earth. I like the aspect of going to other planets and, you know, just aliens invading, you know, not just, I don't know, like, not going into history and, like, trying to rewrite history. Like, that's cool for, like, an episode every now and again, but they're doing it to jab at old political figures and old political view sets, and you gotta remember that it's history, so times have changed, so of course that stuff happened in the past, but you can't write a story to be like, oh, look at how we were, like, we're awful people, like, that happened in the past. You can't expect a flower to grow if you just look at it every time it grows. It's like, oh man, it's still kind of like a seed, it's not blooming yet, it's still grown quite a bit. So, oh wow, I've talked about Doctor Who for a while, but overall, Doctor Who's, actually let me go into Series 12 now, because I didn't talk much about Series 12. Good start. Definitely a really good start with Spyfall and Orphan 55. Good episodes. But, again, leaning a lot into that politicalness, that political side, to where, like, really not that much with Spyfall. It had some lines in Spyfall that made some fans angry, like the whole, the Doctor was a man, oh, I've had an upgrade bit. That made some people mad. It didn't make me mad. It was just one of those lines that I was like, okay, that was a little bit, like, not needed. That wasn't needed to be in there. Like, oh, I've changed. Like, something's changed. Like, I've regenerated into a woman now. You know, there were definitely different ways to portray that line. But then in Orphan 55, the message was clear that this was Earth after climate change had affected the Earth. So the Doctor did not need to go into, like, a 2-minute spiel at the very end about how we can change the climate of Earth. That was obviously a very important message, that we need to keep the Earth clean, so that, you know, so that we don't have, so that we stop climate change. But that was clear throughout the episode. You didn't need a 2-minute lecture that felt like something out of, like, an educational program, you know, explaining something to the audience. That wasn't needed. You know, the episode explained it clearly enough. That's all I gotta say. So, yeah, Doctor Who is absolutely great, but, I mean, nowadays, it's hit or miss, in my personal opinion. I don't think Doctor Who is as good as it used to be. I mean, granted, that's someone who grew up with David Tennant and some of Matt Smith, so, of course, like, I'm going to be biased towards David Tennant and Matt Smith, but they just felt the most Doctor Who to me. Like, I can't look past that. I can't. Next topic is Luigi's Mansion. Now, this is a random topic to throw in here, but this is basically to get people to watch the first episode of the show, because obviously my channel is highly based on Luigi's Mansion. So, Luigi's Mansion is a game that I first played when I was about, what would I have been? It was like 2006 or 2007 when I first played it, so I would have been like 7 or 8. When I first played the original Luigi's Mansion, and I absolutely loved it. It scared the pants off of me when I was a kid, but I absolutely loved that. I seriously loved how different it was compared to the other Mario games I played when I was a kid. It was just so unique, so different. I loved the ghost design. I loved the design of the game in general, the atmosphere, the aesthetic. I loved it all. It was, to me, a game that could not be beat. It was a game that was just perfection in every sense of the word when I was a kid, and even to this day, it might not be, you know, a very long game. The boo capturing might be monotonous. It might be a little bit repetitive, but to me, it's still a fun game that can be evolved into a game that could be awesome. Now, here's where Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3 fall short for me. It's not like Luigi's Mansion 1. Now, you could say, I think someone actually left a comment on one of my videos not too long ago, saying that this isn't the series changing, this is the series evolving. And I don't think that's the case, because evolving is basically making changes to make the experience better. And I think many people can argue that Dark Moon, or Luigi's Mansion 2, depending on where you're from, did not do anything to make this series better. Sure, it gave Luigi more personality, it gave the ghosts some personality, but it stripped away a lot of what made Luigi's Mansion great. It was very hard to explore because the environments weren't very explorative. The mission structure basically hindered the exploration. It made the exploration undesirable because it hindered you from exploring a lot of the time. There weren't any portrait ghosts, so the variety of ghosts that you were fighting were only the main common ghosts, which leads into another problem, which is the atmosphere completely changed into a more kid, goofy, minion-y kind of experience. And I just did not like Dark Moon at all. The Possessor boss ghost just completely ruined everything for me. Just simply because they just did not feel like Luigi's Mansion, especially the snow boss, the ice boss. That was horrible. I hated that boss fight. You had to use motion controls and shoot a cannonball at an ice monster. And it was just one of the worst things I've ever experienced. I hated it. It did not feel like Luigi's Mansion to me. So when the third game was announced, I was excited because they talked a lot about making it more like the original, but at the same time I was concerned because I'm like, it's the same developer that made Dark Moon, they could still mess up a lot of things. And thankfully the game is good, but it's just not to the quality or near enough to the original that I would have liked. Now maybe this is me just wanting it to be a true sequel to the original and Dark Moon just being forgotten about. I want a true sequel to the original game, not Dark Moon. So I wanted a creepy experience, not scary. There's a difference between creepy and atmospheric and scary. There's a complete difference. Creepy and atmospheric, it means you kind of send maybe goosebumps, your hair maybe stands up, you maybe shiver a little bit, that kind of stuff. That falls into creepy and atmospheric. But scary is jumping. And people told me oh, there was a moment where you were looking through a telescope and a ghost jumped out at you. That's different. I don't think that falls under either category of scary or creepy. That falls under the category of cheap jump scare. Cheap jump scares are not scary. They are not really part of horror unless they are led up by something creepy or scary. So if there's a hint that there might be a jump scare and people are expecting it but don't know when it's going to happen, that kind of works. But when you're just looking through a telescope, looking around, maybe if you're thinking about it, you might think, oh, there might be a jump scare there. But it's just a cheap jump scare. There's nothing creepy, nothing scary about it. It'll make you jump, but you're not going to be scared for the rest of the night because of it, and you're not going to get goosebumps because of it. It's just a cheap jump scare. So that's that. But, I don't mind the art style change. That's one thing I don't mind that they did in Dark Moon, is in the first game they had a really realistic mansion with realistic looking furniture, paintings, books. Everything looked realistic. And then in the second game, everything got a more cartoony overhaul. And that was, I'm presuming, to make it fit in more with the Mario aesthetic. And that's a change that I didn't mind too much. I mean, I would way prefer a realistic setting, a realistic style mansion. But I do not mind the change of the mansion being cartoony. I don't mind that much. That wasn't that bad for me. What I didn't like was how lighthearted the game was. Now, the game shouldn't be scary. Like I said, the game shouldn't be scary. You shouldn't be scared to play the game. But there should be some genuinely creepy moments. And I could really only recall one creepy moment and one... It's just that there was a reference to the movie It on one of the floors, so that's kind of creepy. But the actual creepy part was the witch in the well. Now, this is where the jump scare kind of worked. Because you saw the camera pan up with a little bit of eerie music to the well, you knew something was going to pop out of it. That is what I mean by kind of creepy. That kind of jump scare works. Kind of. It was kind of cheap, but regardless. But I just thought Luigi's Mansion 3 was just... It wasn't the kind of sequel to Luigi's Mansion that I wanted. There's so many people, think that, I'm harsh for saying that I don't want next level games to develop Luigi's Mansion anymore. It's not because that they're a bad developer. It's not because I don't like them as a developer. Obviously, they made the Mario Strikers games, which I think are brilliant games. But, I really think that they didn't do with Luigi's Mansion what should have been done with Luigi's Mansion. Now Luigi's Mansion just kind of feels like another Mario game because it's goofy, lighthearted, like any other Mario game, just with a little bit of a spookier vibe. But, you know, with the creepier mansion and way more variety of comic ghosts, let's not even get into that, how lacking the comic ghosts were in this game and how simple and not inspired the designs were for most of them. The Slinker and the Trapper were pretty good. The Oozer was decent, and then the Hammer and Goob I thought were just bleh. Like, the Goob's okay, but it's so generic, But, I mean, Luigi's Mansion 3, like I said, it's a good game. It's a good game. But it's not near enough the quality of the original that makes me appreciate it as much as other people do. You know, there are so many people who are still defending this game, and a lot of people who really do like this game are people who've never played either of the original two games. I've seen so many reviews of people saying they really like the game who've never played the original two. And whenever they say, let me know which of the original games I should play, I always tell them the first game. The second game, especially when you have this game now, this game is what Dark Moon should have been. I mean, it's not what it should have been, but like comparing it to what Dark Moon is, like this is what next game should have done. I always tell them just go back and play the original. Like, even if you don't have a GameCube, get a 3DS. It's probably cheaper to get a GameCube in Luigi's Mansion. So get a GameCube in Luigi's Mansion, or if you have a Wii, play Luigi's Mansion on that. So much better. Like, I think the atmosphere just makes it more of a unique game, because I think, like I said, with the goofiness that Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3 added, it took away the unique style and charm that the first game introduced. And it really just put a damper on the experience. Now, for those of you who do not know, if maybe this is the first video you're seeing on my channel, I don't know how it would be, but anyways, I am doing a video in the, actually probably not too near future. It depends on how finances work out, but I will be making a video talking about Luigi's Mansion 4 and my personal ideas on how next level games could make that game feel more like the original while also keeping some of the new things they added in 2 and 3. So make sure to stay tuned for that whenever that comes out. I'm very excited. I'm trying to add atmosphere back into the game, trying to add all that kind of stuff back into the game, but I'm also going to be adding a lot of optional things. But I'm not going to go into that too much. Make sure to stay tuned for updates and all that kind of stuff. I think that's probably it for today's video. So thank you guys so much for watching episode 1 of Nostalgic Overload. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know down in the comments down below if you would like an episode 2 and what kind of topics you'd like me to cover. I will cover anything that has to deal with 90s or early 2000s nostalgia. I think today's topics were pretty, decent when it comes to that. We covered Harry Potter, covered Doctor Who, covered Luigi's Mansion. I think that's pretty good in terms of nostalgia. So let me know down in the comments down below what you guys would like to see from the next episode of Nostalgic Overload. But before you guys go, make sure to click one of these things. I don't know which side it'll be on, but just click something. Click the subscribe button, watch another video, check out my Patreon so that this show could be made more and more and more. You guys' support has always meant a lot to me, and hopefully I get to do more of these in the future. So, yeah. Later, guys.